Now we're ready to begin exploring drawing in Flash. Flash graphics are made up of two primary elements, strokes and fills. Strokes may vary in thickness, but they look like lines. A stroke may be a single straight line or a curved line or a complex series of connected lines. And strokes can also be dotted or dashed lines. The fills are colored shapes or surface areas. A fill may take on a common shape, such as a rectangle or an oval, or it may also be a complex shape, such as a cartoon character's head. What we're going to do now is we're just going to draw a basic rectangle on the screen here on our stage. So I do need to go to my rectangle tool. You'll notice there's a little black arrow. That means there are more than one tools nested in this spot on my toolbar. So if I click and hold that, you will see all of my options. I want to make sure though that we do use the rectangle tool, which is the top of the list. And I'm going to go over to my properties now that that tool has been selected. I'm going to pop open properties. And you can see here again, fill and stroke. The stroke is represented by the pencil and the fill is represented by the bucket. Now let's start with the stroke. Let me click on that stroke color. And let's just choose black for the stroke color. And let's make the stroke width 3 or 4 pixels. So I'll just drag the slider here. Now I can also type in, if I can't get the accuracy on the slider, I'll just actually type in a 3 over here and hit my tab key. Style, solid, yeah, that means a solid line, but you can see here there are other options. Now with my fill, I'm going to choose a color, and I guess I'll pick orange for that. So when I draw my box, it will be an orange box with a black outline and a fairly thick outline because I've set it to 3 pixels. So let's just drag that on the screen now. Now you may have remember I did set snapping on the grid, so that's why you can see that it's magnetically snapping. And when I let go, there is my orange box with a black outline. Now that I've got my simple rectangle on stage, if I want to edit it, I would have to go to my selection tool. And remember, there are the two basic elements. There's the fill and the stroke. If I want to isolate the stroke, you can see when my cursor goes over it, I can click it once. It's only going to address that one side. If I want to get the whole stroke, I need to double click on that edge, that line. So if I double click it, now you can see that the whole stroke has been highlighted. And if I go to my properties, I can change that. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change that to a green outline. Then I can do it like that. Now if I wanted to edit the fill, I can click once on the fill, pop open my properties, and change that as well. Now if I want to edit both at the same time, I simply go basically double click on the fill. So let me just deselect by clicking this empty area right now. If I double click inside the fill area, it will not only highlight the fill, but all of the stroke as well. So double clicking, and you can see everything now is highlighted. And if I go to properties, I have the ability to edit more than one thing at a time. Again, I can make that stroke larger, smaller, very accurate. If I want to type it in, hit my tab key to enter that. And away we go. So again, double clicking inside the fill will highlight the whole drawing object as opposed to isolating one or the other with a single click. Or in the case of the stroke, you still have to double click it, but you double click at the line, on the line. And you can see the icon has that little curved line on it, on your cursor. So that tells you that you are over the stroke and it's clickable at this point. So if I double click that, again, the stroke will highlight completely. Now in Flash, there are 2 drawing modes. And this is quite important actually. It defaults in what is known as the merge mode, which I'll give you a bit of demonstration here right now on what are the features of the merge mode, as opposed to the other mode, which is called the object mode, which we'll get into very shortly. Again, you can see here, if I double click on here, I've got my rectangle. I'm going to draw another shape on the stage on the same layer. I'm still working on one layer. We're not going to address multiple layers for this lesson yet. So I need to go to my rectangle tool, hold down my mouse, and choose Oval Tool. Now I'm going to change the colors on this a little bit. Now I can change them over here in my toolbar or in my Properties window. So I guess this time I'll try my toolbar, go to my fill color, and we'll choose a bright red. And as the stroke color, I'll choose a blue. Now I'm going to draw an oval that's going to actually intersect this rectangle just to demonstrate what happens in merge mode. So I'll just draw it down here and cover part of that rectangle. I will go to my selection tool. Now when I'm in merge mode and I'm drawing on the same layer, it's just as the name suggests, these elements have now merged together. It's no longer a rectangle behind a circle. It's actually what you see there is all flat on one layer. And if I highlight these fills, for example, you can see that it just highlights. And I can actually highlight that and move that. So I'll grab that and move it. And you see what happened here. It got sliced. So anything that gets drawn on top is literally merging. I'm going to click Command Z here to undo. Control Z on the PC and put that back. And just click on that circle fill and drag that as well, just to demonstrate. Now I could do that with the stroke too. Double click on that blue stroke on the circle and then carefully drag that around, and there we go. Now I just clicked undo to put it back. But I can isolate those strokes by double clicking on them, and you can see that a part of it has been removed. Again, due to the merge feature, so I'll click Command Z to undo that. And those are the basic features of merge drawing with these vector drawing tools. Once they overlap on the same layer, they become one. Now yes, I can isolate the different colors, no problem, but it's no longer a full rectangle behind a full circle. Okay, another thing I want to point out is when you're in merge mode and you're on the selection tool, I can click and drag over an area, and whatever area I drag over top becomes highlighted. You can see portions of the stroke, portions of the fill have been highlighted. If I click and drag that, I'm literally cutting that out. I'm tearing that away. So I'm going to click undo. But again, you can see here, I can go grab any section with my selection tool when I'm in merge mode and isolate it and tear it apart, for example. So I'm going to click undo a couple of times here, put that back together. Now we're going to explore the other drawing mode known as object mode. If I go back to my rectangle tool, I'll click on the oval here and go back to rectangle tool. You'll notice at the bottom of my toolbar I have two icons. Object drawings, snap to object. So I'm going to click on object drawings. That's what turns object drawing mode on and off. Right now it's off, so if I click on it, you see that it looks darker. So now when I draw a rectangle, I'll just draw one down here. I'll just leave it with the same color settings. It looks slightly different. I don't know if you can tell, but there's actually a blue marquee around it now. Let me just go to my selection tool quickly. And if I click away, for example, it looks just like the other elements. But if I click on it, you see it doesn't have the little dots for the fill. It actually has a blue marquee line. And I can move that around. And it's actually a complete object. It's probably more what your intuition would think of as an object, or more like how it works in Adobe Illustrator, for example. Let me just draw a circle on top of it, similar to this setup, and demonstrate more features of the object drawing mode. So let me go to my rectangle tool and choose oval tool. I'll change these colors here so that they are distinguished. Black stroke, green fill. And I'm on the oval tool, so I'm going to draw an oval that overlaps. You can see that it is snapping to my grid because my grid was set to snap to grid. And there we go. Again, probably easier to see on the oval. There's the blue marquee line around it. Let me go back up to my object selection tool rather. If I click on the object, I'll click away first of all, then I'll click back on it. I can drag it around, it remains intact. And that's basically the main difference between merge drawing mode and object drawing mode, is that these things become separate elements. They do not merge, in other words. And if I grab that rectangle, it stays intact and it stays its own object. Again, this is more how it works in Adobe Illustrator, for example. And one is no better than the other. It depends on what you want to do with this stuff ultimately. I would say most developers do use the merge drawing mode, and you can see here when I highlight it, it does look different. It's got the little dots. If I double click on that, again it highlights the fill and the stroke, where if I click on here, even if I double click it, well actually that brings me to an interesting feature. If I double click it, it actually goes down a level, and you can see here in my navigation that I can actually affect it now. Basically the object mode, it's almost like it's grouped, if you will. If I click on scene 1, I will go back up to the top layer and it's not editable. So if I double click it, it does become editable, just like a merged object drawing. But it's unique, it's on its own, it's not combined with the circle, and that's the main difference here. I can click away, double click on the other object, and then double click it again to get into its editing mode. But let me just click on scene 1, which is my top level, and we're going to get more into this navigation tool later, but just know that when you click on scene 1, you're going to the top level. And these are like separate, distinct objects. Now you can combine the two as well. Now it is possible to have merge mode graphics as well as object mode graphics on the same layer. Basically though, the object mode graphics will always sit in front of the merge mode graphics. So if you're going to combine them on the same layer, just be aware that the object mode graphics will always sit at the front. Now let me introduce you to the sub-selection tool. It's the white arrow tool. What this allows you to do is to go into any graphic, whether it's merge mode or object mode, and actually redefine its shape by pulling on the various vector points. Normally you need to click on the stroke area, and you can see how the icon changes here. If I click on the circle, for example, when I click it, you'll see that it comes up with some anchor points and handles. Now if I click on an anchor point and isolate it, I can actually drag that and change its position, and you'll see these handles, which we're going to get way more into when we learn the pen tool, but the handles basically affect the shape of the line as well. So I can not only grab the anchor point, but once I have the anchor point highlighted, I can grab its associated handles and change the angle and the severity of the angle as well. And I can do that on any one of these. And grab the square, I can just simply stretch that out. And I'll click on these object modes as well, and it does the exact same thing. Now if I click inside, you'll notice it doesn't really do anything. You do need to click on the line. So you'll see again how the cursor changes. Highlight the line, and then go in and select your various anchor points. And if they have handles on them, you can grab the handles and affect the shape that way as well. And that is the sub-selection tool, which again is the white arrow tool. Since we're on the topic of selection tools, I want to introduce you to one more selection tool, which is the lasso tool. And it's right here, and I'll click on it now. Now it works differently depending on whether your drawing is in merge mode or object mode. Let's start with the merge mode drawings up here. Basically, it allows you to draw a random shape, which I'm drawing with my mouse here. And that establishes the unique shape. And I can pull that out and isolate it if I want. I'm going to go undo. Now if I drag the lasso tool over the object mode element, it simply highlights it. It doesn't matter really how I draw that shape, so long as it captures part of the object within the selection. It's just going to select the whole thing. So if I want to go in to an object mode element and do a custom selection of an area, I'll go with my selection tool, double click on the object, which puts me in the drawing object editing mode, then go to my lasso tool, then make my unique shape and address that. And if I go back by clicking either scene 1 or the blue arrow to get back, you can see how now again it's in object mode, but my little isolated effect has taken place. Now I'm going to go undo here, Command Z, 2 times and put it back the way it was. But that's the lasso tool. Again, on merge mode, it does a custom shape. In object mode, it simply selects whatever is contained within the selection. So that time it selected both objects because again I dragged across both of those objects. However, if I'm in the top and I drag across both objects, it's going to select that exact shape that I've established. Okay, so that's the lasso tool. I'm just going to click out here to deselect. Now one last thing I want to address between the differences of the merge mode drawing elements versus the object mode drawing elements are, let's say I want to switch one to the other. So for example, at the top here I have merge mode. I can double click on the object, which highlights the whole thing including the stroke. And if I want to convert that to an object mode, I simply go up to Modify, Combine Objects, Union. And you can see now when I highlight it, it has the blue marquee and it is distinctly in object mode. Now if I move that, it does still leave that because that's already happened, but if I do it now, it's not going to tear away at any of that other merge mode element. I'm just going to undo some of these moves here, put it back where it was. And if I want to do the opposite, let's say I want to grab this element, which is currently in object mode, and I want to turn that into merge mode, with it highlighted, I can go up to Modify and choose Break Apart. So Break Apart. And you can see with the dots here that it now has been converted to a merge mode element. If I double click that, tear that away, you can see that's a merge mode element. So if I drag that over another merge mode element and then deselect it by clicking away, it is now combined with this. If I double click that again, you see how it left a hole there. I'll just undo that. So again, you can always convert it from merge mode to object mode or from object mode to merge mode under the Modify pull-down menu.